The air vibrated with the promise of glory. At the center of the athletics track, under a sun that kissed the skin with a warm, inviting heat, Sofia Almeida prepared herself. Her muscles, tense and ready, were the personification of discipline and dreams. The roar of the crowd, a sonic wave that enveloped her, did not distract her. On the contrary, it fueled the flame that burned in her chest. She was the rising star, the university's hope, the young black woman whose innate talent and tireless dedication had propelled her to the top of collegiate athletics. Every fiber of her being yearned for the explosion, for the race that would lead her to victory, to the consecration of years of sacrifice and sweat. Beside her, Victoria Montenegro, the rival, exuded an aura of calculated coldness. Her blue eyes, behind a mask of false cordiality, hid an abyss of envy and resentment. The privilege of her family, the Montenegros, wealthy university sponsors, had paved her way, but it could not buy the raw talent and genuine passion that Sofia possessed. The tension between the two was almost palpable, an invisible yet dense thread that connected them in a rivalry that transcended athletic competition. Victoria, with her artificial beauty and haughty demeanor, observed Sofia with a predatory gleam, a dark desire to annihilate not only her performance, but her very essence. The starting gun echoed, cutting through the tense silence and launching the athletes into a whirlwind of motion. Sofia, with her explosive start, gained an almost instantaneous lead. The wind on her face, the smell of the track's rubber, the rhythmic sound of her own footsteps, all merged into a symphony of speed and control. She felt the ground beneath her feet, an extension of her own will, propelling her forward. Victory was within her grasp, a bright future unfolded before her, filled with podium finishes, records, and the realization of a dream that seemed so close. But, in an instant, the symphony turned into a cry of pain. A subtle push, almost imperceptible to most, but devastating for Sofia, unbalanced her. Her body, once a perfect machine, folded at an unnatural angle. The impact with the ground was brutal, a shock that reverberated through her entire being. The pain, sharp and searing, exploded in her knee, a sensation of tearing and burning that made her gasp. The roar of the crowd turned into a murmur of horror, and Sofia's world dissolved into a blur of agony and despair. She lay fallen, her leg grotesquely bent, the promise of glory shattered into 1,000 pieces on the hot asphalt of the track. Victoria, meanwhile, crossed the finish line, a victorious but cold smile on her lips, as chaos erupted around her. The incident, hushed up by her family's influence, would be the beginning of a long and painful ordeal for Sofia, a period of darkness where her dreams would be tested to their limit. The days that followed the accident were a blur of physical pain and emotional despair. Sofia lay in a hospital bed, her knee immobilized, her mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. The diagnosis, a severe injury that would require surgery and months of rehabilitation, sounded like a death sentence for her dreams. She felt the weight of injustice crushing her, anger boiling in her veins as she learned that the incident had been conveniently swept under the rug by the influence of the Montenegro family. The university, once a place of opportunity and hope, now seemed like a den of privilege and corruption, where truth was a worthless currency. The university's silence about the incident was deafening. There was no investigation, no punishment for Victoria. The official narrative was that of an unfortunate accident, a fatality in the heat of competition. Sofia, with her broken body and wounded soul, felt invisible, her voice muffled by power and influence. With each passing day, the shadow of the past lengthened, enveloping her in a darkness that seemed endless. She saw her colleagues training, competing, living the dreams that had been stolen from her, and bitterness settled in her heart. Physical therapy was a constant reminder of her fragility, each movement an excruciating effort that felt more like punishment than a path to recovery. Months dragged on, turning into years. Sofia left the university, the flame of athletics in her chest reduced to almost extinguished embers. She tried to rebuild her life away from the tracks, but the memory of what she had lost haunted her. The sound of sneakers hitting the asphalt, the smell of sweat and grass, the gleam of metals, all evoked a deep pain, a mourning for a future that never materialized. She worked in jobs that barely covered her expenses, life a stark contrast to the brilliance it once promised. Each day, the feeling of powerlessness deepened, and the idea of justice seemed increasingly distant, an unattainable ideal in a world where power spoke louder than truth. The scar on her knee was a constant reminder of the betrayal, a map of her fall and the darkness that swallowed her. But somewhere within her, a small ember of resilience still burned, waiting for the right moment to rekindle the flame of hope and vengeance.
Years passed, and Sofia's life became a monotonous routine devoid of the passion that once drove her. She worked in a small bookstore, the smell of paper and ink a gentle comfort, but the absence of wind on her face and the rhythm of running left a void in her soul. One day, while organizing a shelf of sports biographies, her eyes landed on a familiar name, Elena Petrova. The former athlete, a legend of university athletics, and an alumna of the same university as Sofia, was known for her unwavering integrity and a career marked by victories, and, curiously, by an abrupt departure from the sport, shrouded in rumors of injustice. Sofia felt a curiosity she hadn't visited in a long time. She began to read Elena's biography, and with each page, a silent connection formed. Elena, like Sofia, had faced the dark side of sports, the corruption and privilege that often stifled merit. Elena's story mirrored her own, but with a different ending. Elena had risen again, not on the tracks, but as an influential voice against injustices in sports. The biography mentioned that Elena now dedicated her time to a small training center for young athletes in an underprivileged community, far from the spotlight in university politics. Driven by newfound hope, Sofia decided to visit the center. The place was modest but vibrant, filled with the sound of sneakers hitting the ground and the smell of sweat and determination. At the center of the track, a woman with dark hair and piercing eyes watched the young people with an almost reverent attention. It was Elena Petrova. Her posture, though not as slender as an active athlete's, still showed the well-defined musculature and upright stance of someone who knows the discipline of sports. Sofia felt a shiver run down her spine, a sense of recognition that this encounter was not by chance. With her heart pounding, Sofia approached. She introduced herself, mentioning her past as a university athlete and the injury that had kept her off the tracks. Elena listened to her with unwavering calm, her blue eyes fixed on Sofia's as if reading her soul. When Sofia mentioned Victoria Montenegro's name and how the incident had been hushed up, a flicker of understanding and sadness passed through Elena's eyes. She revealed that she too had been a victim of similar manipulations and injustices in her time, and that the Montenegro family was known for their questionable methods. Elena, with her deep, welcoming voice, told Sofia that she saw in her the same passion and fire that once drove her. She offered Sofia not only a place to train, but a path to recovery, a place where she could heal her wounds, not just physical, but emotional. Elena's invitation was not just to train the body, but to rekindle the flame of hope and justice that Sofia thought she had lost forever. The smell of wet earth and the distant sound of children's laughter filled the air, a comforting contrast to the barrenness of her previous life. Sofia felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of belonging, and that finally, She had found someone who understood her.
Elena Petrova's training center became Sofia's sanctuary. There, amidst the smell of liniment and the constant sound of weights and labored breaths, Sofia began her journey of rebirth. Elena, with her infinite patience and keen insight, not only trained her physically, but guided her through the emotional scars the injury had left. The workouts were grueling. Every muscle in Sofia's body cried for rest, but Elena's firm, encouraging voice propelled her forward. She taught her to listen to her body, to respect its limits, but also to overcome them with determination. Sweat poured down her forehead, her heart pounded like a drum, but with each repetition, each run, Sofia felt strength return, not just to her muscles, but to her spirit. Elena didn't limit herself to physical exercises. She shared her own experiences, the injustices she had faced, the battles she had fought. Her words were a balm to Sofia's wounded soul, who finally found someone who understood the depth of her pain and the validity of her anger. Elena taught her to channel this anger, to transform it into fuel for her recovery, into an engine for her pursuit of justice. She encouraged her to visualize victory, to feel the wind on her face again, to hear the roar of the crowd, but this time a roar of support and recognition. Gradually, the stiffness in her knee gave way to flexibility, chronic pain to a distant memory. Sofia began to run again. First, hesitant steps, then short sprints, and finally the exhilarating sensation of speed she loved so much. The sound of her sneakers on the track, once a reminder of her fall, was now a melody of triumph. She felt the ground beneath her feet, the connection to the earth, the energy flowing through her. Every workout was a victory, every drop of sweat a promise of return. The light in her eyes, once dull, shone again with the intensity of a star. She was stronger, faster, but above all, wiser. The experience had forged her, transforming her into a more complete athlete, not only in terms of physical ability, but of mental resilience and purpose. With renewed strength and a focused mind, Sofia, under Elena's guidance, began to chart her way back to the competitive scene. The decision to return was not taken lightly. It was a calculated step, a strategic move in her pursuit of justice. Elena enrolled her in smaller competitions, away from the major spotlights, so that Sofia could test her limits, regain the rhythm and confidence that the injury had shaken. Every race was a test, not only of her physical ability, but of her mental resilience. She felt the curious glances, the whispers about her past, but Elena's voice in her mind and the flame of justice in her heart kept her steady. Sofia's return to the tracks was gradual but steady. She felt the grass under her feet, the wind in her hair, the adrenaline pulsing through her veins. With each victory, however small, Sofia's confidence grew. She was no longer the naive young woman who had been knocked down. She was a woman forged in pain and overcoming, with a clear and unwavering purpose. Elena, watching her, saw not only the athlete, but the warrior Sofia had become. She prepared her not only to win races, but for the battle ahead, the confrontation with the past that had marked her. News of Sofia's return began to spread, a murmur that would soon turn into a shout. The media, always eager for stories of overcoming, began to take an interest in her journey. Sofia, with Elena's help, decided to use this attention to her advantage. They carefully planned each appearance, each interview, weaving a narrative of resilience and perseverance, but without yet revealing the full truth about the incident. The goal was to build a support base, to rekindle the public's memory of what had happened, without giving Victoria Montenegro a chance to prepare for what was to come. The climax of her return would be the National Athletics Championship, the same stage where her dreams had been brutally interrupted. The irony was palpable and the tension
growing. Sofia knew Victoria would be there, and the idea of facing her again, not just on the track, but before the world, filled her with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Elena reminded her that victory would not just be crossing the finish line first, but exposing the truth, unmasking hypocrisy, and restoring the integrity of the sport. The smell of sweat and the vibration of the crowd in the smaller stadiums were a prelude to the grand stage, where justice, finally, would be served. Sofia felt the weight of expectation, but also the strength of her conviction, knowing that this was the moment of her redemption.
The day of the National Athletics Championship dawned with a dense fog of anticipation. The stadium, a modern coliseum of steel and concrete, buzzed with the energy of the crowd. Journalists, athletes, fans all awaited the main event, the 100-meter dash, where Sofia Almeida would make her triumphant return. She felt the weight of the gazes, the curiosity and expectation hanging in the air, but her mind was focused, her body a finely tuned machine for performance. During warm-up, Sofia saw Victoria Montenegro. The antagonist, with her haughty posture and forced smile, tried to exude confidence, but Sofia noticed the tension in her shoulders, the glint of nervousness in her eyes. The encounter was silent, a duel of glances that spoke volumes. Victoria tried to hold Sofia's gaze, but the protagonist's intensity, the silent strength emanating from her, made her look away. It was the first time they had seen each other up close since the incident, and the absence of words made the confrontation even more potent. Sofia felt a shiver run down her spine, not of fear, but of a cold, calculated determination. This was the moment. The stage was set. As they prepared for the race, the tension in the air was almost unbearable. The announcer called out the athletes' names, and when Sofia's name was uttered, a wave of applause and cheers swept through the stadium. Victoria's name was met with a mixture of applause and a few isolated boos, a sign that the truth, even if unspoken, was already beginning to echo through the stadium. Sofia took a deep breath, the smell of sweat and rubber filling her lungs, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. She positioned herself in the starting blocks, feeling the rough texture of the material under her fingers, the familiarity of the moment calming her. Beside her, Victoria seemed like a statue, her expression carefully controlled. She could feel the rival's ragged breath, the almost imperceptible tremor in her hands. This was not just a physical clash, it was a psychological battle, a war of nerves. Sofia knew that victory would not just be about speed, but about breaking Victoria's facade, exposing her vulnerability. The silence before the starting gun was deafening, filled only by the sound of their own beating hearts. Sofia closed her eyes for an instant, visualizing the race, the victory, and the moment when the truth would finally come to light. She felt the energy of the crowd, Elena's support, and the memory of her fall, all merging into an unstoppable force. The silent confrontation was over. The real battle was about to begin. The starting gun ripped through the air, and the athletes shot forward like arrows. Sofia, with an explosion of energy contained for years, gained an almost immediate lead. Her muscles worked in perfect synchronicity, each stride a testament to her recovery and unwavering determination. The wind on her face was a kiss of freedom, the sound of her own footsteps on the track a melody of triumph. She wasn't just running, she was flying, propelled by the memory of pain, the promise of justice, and Elena's silent support.
Victoria, meanwhile, struggled to keep pace. The pressure of the moment, Sofia's overwhelming presence, and the weight of her own guilt suffocated her. Her movements were stiff, her breathing ragged, and the forced smile she maintained crumbled with every meter. The distance between them grew, not just in terms of speed, but of spirit. Sofia was the personification of resilience, Victoria of the decay of unearned privilege. When Sofia crossed the finish line, the stadium erupted in a deafening roar. She had won, and not just the race, but herself, the past, and the injustice that had marked her. The time, a new personal record, was a detail. The victory was the message. As the crowd celebrated, Sofia, still breathless, but with her eyes fixed on Victoria, walked toward her rival. A television camera, broadcasting the event live, followed her every step, capturing the intensity of the moment. With a voice choked with emotion yet firm in her conviction, Sofia began to speak. She didn't shout, didn't accuse with anger, but with a calm that cut deeper than any scream. She described the incident, the subtle push, the searing pain, how her dreams had been shattered. She spoke about the Montenegro family's influence, the university's silence, how the truth had been suppressed. Every word was a blow, a revelation that echoed through the stadium's loudspeakers, reaching not only Victoria, but everyone who protected her. Victoria, pale and trembling, tried to deny it, but her words were lost in an incoherent stammer. The mask of perfection she had cultivated for years crumbled, revealing the insecurity and malice behind it. The crowd, previously euphoric, was now in stunned silence, absorbing Sofia's every word. Victoria's face, once so carefully made up, was now disfigured by panic and shame. Tears streamed down her face, not of regret, but of despair at being unmasked live before millions of people. The truth, finally, had been revealed, and the empire of corruption and prejudice that protected Victoria began to crumble. The air, once heavy with tension, now felt lighter, purified by Sofia's courage and the force of truth. Justice, though delayed, had arrived, and its taste was sweet and liberating. The impact of Sofia's words was immediate and overwhelming. The stadium, once a stage for athletic celebration, transformed into a court of justice. The live broadcast captured Victoria's reaction, her pathetic attempt at denial, and the undeniable truth unfolding before the eyes of millions. Social media exploded. Sofia's story spread like wildfire, and the hashtag #JusticeForSofia dominated trends. The Montenegro family, once untouchable, saw their empire of influence crumble under the weight of public opinion and the investigations that followed. Sponsors withdrew their support, the university launched an internal investigation, and Victoria's once promising career was reduced to ashes. She was not only banned from the sport, but her reputation was irremediably stained, condemned to live under the shadow of her own malice. For Sofia, the triumph was not just the gold medal around her neck, shining under the spotlights, but the sense of peace that finally embraced her. That moment on the track, the truth exposed, was an act of healing for her wounded soul. She no longer felt the bitterness that had consumed her for years. In its place, there was a deep sense of relief and gratitude. Elena Petrova, with a proud smile and tear-filled eyes, embraced Sofia, an embrace that sealed not only a training partnership, but a friendship forged in adversity and the pursuit of a greater ideal. The smell of sweat and the vibration of the crowd now were a reminder of her strength, her voice, and the power of truth. Sofia continued to compete, no longer driven by revenge, but by a pure passion for the sport and the desire to inspire others. She became an active voice in the fight against corruption and prejudice in athletics, using her platform to advocate for integrity and equal opportunities. Her story, The Athlete's Return, became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the greatest adversities, truth and justice always find a way to prevail. The sunlight on her skin, the wind in her hair, the sound of her footsteps on the track, all of this now carried a new meaning, the meaning of a life lived with purpose, of a battle won, and of a future built on the solid foundation of truth and integrity. Sofia's journey from a broken promise to an inspiring legend echoed in the hearts of all who dared to dream and fight for a more just world.